How do you explain getting this so wrong?
Well, first, Savannah, to be fair, the helicopter has been the mode of transport from our embassy to the airport for the last 20 years.
But you know the larger point. It's not the helicopter.
Is how we move
it's not the mechanism.
Forth, so
No, it's the last-minute scramble. You know that. It's the last-minute scramble when the assurances from the president himself were this was not what we were going to see.
It is certainly the case that the speed with which cities fell was much greater than anyone anticipated, including the Afghans.
That was National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan going on TV because his boss won't and just taking it on the chin out there. Joining me now to talk about that, Lieutenant Colonel Jay Carafano, Vice President for National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Colonel, I guess I'll just give you the floor here. I've given my own opinion. How could an administration, generals, politicians, whoever you want to blame, how could everybody get embarrassed this badly on the world stage?
You know, I actually think that's easy to explain, and I really feel like I know enough of the inside story from talking to various parties that I don't think this explanation is far off. This is not a military planning failure, and it's not an intelligence failure. Even if you read what the president said, clearly this was a very possible scenario that they might face. So there's no question about that. I think the Biden team made an assessment that they were handing a gift to the Taliban, and they just thought the Taliban would just let us get out of the way before everything collapsed, and then we could just say it wasn't our fault. So that was an incredibly unrealistic expectation, because why would the Taliban do that? In this part of the world, honor is power. They had an opportunity to humiliate Biden and the United States. They wouldn't pass that up. So it was a stupid premise or assumption to begin with. And then what's worse is they really didn't have a plan B on how to deal with that. Now, this is actually not unusual for this team. Remember, this is the same team as the Obama team. And when a crisis erupts, their notion is to pull away and hope bad things don't happen. When everything goes south, deny, pretend it's not a crisis, blame people out, say it's not your fault, and hope you have a friendly press that buys you enough time to get your act together. And it seems the Biden team's doing exactly the same as we saw Obama do in Syria, in Iraq, and Libya.
Okay, Colonel, help me understand this, though, because what you just described to me sounds like what I said. It sounds like we have a government run now by a bunch of radical academics with zero real-world experience, and therefore they don't know how life works. But Joe Biden's been in the Senate for 97 years. Joe Biden knows how the world works, even if I disagree with him, right?
Well, I disagree with you a little. These are many of the same officials that were in the Obama administration. A lot of these guys have literally 8 years of government experience, and they lived through Benghazi. They lived through the explosion of ISIS after Obama ran away from Iraq. They lived through the failure of the Red Line in Syria. So this is actually an experienced team, which these are not rookie mistakes made by a new administration that they're just getting started. And this is complete failure. And these guys have outfailed Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter came into office with zero experience and a very inexperienced team, and he did not fail this fast.
I hate to belabor the point. I want to question one last thing. You're saying from people you've talked to, their plan was to leave, and they thought the Taliban were going to be nice enough to let us pull our people out before they took everything over? The people genuinely thought that are making decisions on behalf of the United States of America?
I have talked to people who know exactly what the Trump people briefed the Biden people the way out the door. They said, look, 2,500 minimum deterrence. This holds us in place. You can do this and negotiate with the Taliban forever. And if you decide to pull these people out, this could happen. We were warned about this. We've seen reports the military have briefed them, the intel community briefed them, everybody briefed them that this was a real possibility. Even the administration admits it was a possibility. And yet they did it. And they just assumed that the Taliban would sit there and let them walk out the door before they did anything. And you have to believe, because there was no plan. There was no plan to evacuate people that work with the U.S. There wasn't any plan to evacuate our embassy. They were literally casually, boxing up and taping and sending postcards home when the enemy started to roll. And it wasn't Trump's plan. Even under Trump's plan, the plan was that each region, the military would go in place, they would be consolidated, and then there would be a agreement with the Taliban in that region, and they would walk on from region to region to region. All Biden did was come in and say, forget the Trump plan. We're way smarter than him. We're just going to leave, and we think the Taliban will let us do that.
All right, Colonel, 2.261 trillion. That's on top of 2,400 plus Americans dead, 3,800 plus contractors dead, 66,000 Afghanistan military members killed, and 47,245 civilians killed. I know it's kind of a broad question, right, but I think the United States of America deserves some sort of an explanation for falling this fast when we've lost this much blood and money and supposedly spent 20 years training the Afghans who were there. Were we not training? Were we just playing Xbox? What were we doing?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is actually pretty easy. This wasn't a military defeat. In most places, people just handed stuff over to the Taliban. The Taliban didn't conquer Afghanistan. This was a political defeat. And it was a political defeat because the powers in Afghanistan saw the Americans leaving, and they believed that without the Americans leaving, there's no way they could continue to hold on. And so for their tribes, for their families, they just cut deals with the Taliban. Now, look, nation building was a stupid idea from the start. We were building Afghanistan. But what we were doing is we had created a stability there because with us there, the Taliban were afraid to come after the Afghans. That meant the country wasn't a Disneyland for terrorists. It wasn't destabilizing to the region. And what was the cost, the present cost to Americans? 2,500 troops were stationed there. They weren't fighting. They weren't dying. We were spending less in Afghanistan in a week than we used to spend in a year. So for a very modest commitment, we had achieved something really stable. And we threw that away because Biden wanted to. And, it's kind of unfair to talk about it's humiliating for us. Sure, it's humiliating for us. We'll recover. We're a great country. But the people of Afghanistan, you have a whole generation of people who've grown up believing that women can work, kids can go to school, and people can be beheaded on a whim. All that's vanished for them overnight.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.